as it hit coastal areas and islands. Among the dead was a man struck by a fallen tree and a 5-year-old child apparently swept away in flash flooding. The typhoon quickly weakened as it blew inland towards Manila. Hundreds of thousands of people have sought shelter in evacuation centres, but special precautions have had to be taken to protect them from coronavirus, with self-contained tents for each family.
We're scared. Our fears have doubled. The people here are mixed, unlike when you're at home, safe and don't go out. Here you interact with other evacuees and we still have COVID.
Typhoon Goni came days after another typhoon, Malawi, hit areas further south, killing 22 people before blowing towards Vietnam and causing even more deaths. Now a third storm at Sani is threatening the north of Luzon Island. So far it's less powerful than yesterday's storm, but authorities say it could yet gather more strength. An average of 20 typhoons hit the Philippines each year. Anne Barker, ABC News.
Police in Canada have arrested a man in Quebec City on suspicion of killing 2 people and injuring 5 others in a stabbing rampage on Halloween. Police say the 24-year-old suspect's motive was personal and not terrorism. Authorities had earlier warned residents to remain indoors as they chased the man. He was dressed in medieval clothing and armed with a knife. Soaring infection rates have prompted Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson to introduce a 4-week lockdown in England because of coronavirus. Joe Anderson is the Mayor of Liverpool, where cases have surged in recent weeks.
I think there's a lot of criticism of the government rightly being made. I think we were too slow to go into lockdown back in March, and I think we were too quick to come out, to be frank. We, of course, know that the virus thrives on human contact. And I think, we allowed the lockdown measures with people returning to work so quickly in September, coming back from holidays, children going back to schools, and students coming back to our universities all meant that the spread was likely to increase as human contact increased because of the numbers in our city. But I think that was reflected across the UK in cities up and down the country. So I guess, for me, the government's mixed messages and lack of clarity around what it's doing has made matters worse. And I think, we can see that in the numbers, the infection rate increasing. Health should always come first, and we need a lockdown to try to bring this virus back under control in the UK, and in particular in my area, in my concern here in Liverpool.
Australia's Defence Department may be forced to pay out tens of millions of dollars to a US company over a contract dispute involving crucial new escape and rescue equipment for Australian submarines. 2 years ago, Phoenix International was awarded a $279 million contract to provide the equipment for Australia. A confidential defence report completed last month and seen by the ABC recommends the deal be terminated. Now with a look at finance news, here is David Chow. And David, so Westpac has announced this huge drop in annual profit. Take us through the figures.
Yeah, Joe, so this seems to be a worse than expected result, judging by the share price. Westpac is down 1%, while the other banks have just posted small rises or small losses. So that's one way to gauge the indication from the market. So the full-year profit of Westpac dropped to $2.3 billion. That's its annual profit. So that's 2/3 down compared to last year. And it was weighed down by about $3 billion worth of impairments. Now, let's break down those impairments. One of them is that record $1.3 billion fine that Westpac has agreed to pay for breaching anti-money laundering laws 23 million times. And it also has seriously ramped up its provision for bad debts. It's expecting, I guess, a lot of people and businesses to default on their loans still due to the economic uncertainty from this COVID recession. There is some positive news in the result, the fact that it's paying a final dividend of 31 cents per share. So shareholders should be happy with that. However, that dividend is 60% down compared to last year's final dividend. And it comes after Westpac decided not to pay an interim dividend earlier this year. So there's some more positive developments in this result. Westpac said that about 2/3 of its mortgage customers have started paying their loans again. So it granted a loan repayment holiday to a lot of people who were struggling with their bad debts. So the value of home loan deferrals fell from about $55 billion earlier this year to $16 billion now. So it's really come down a lot, the number of outstanding loans that have been on deferment holidays. So how does it compare? Well, Westpac last week reported its profit fell 40%, so it did better than Westpac. And then
ANZ
last week, yeah. So its its profit fell, but not as much as Westpac. And then later this week, Thursday, NAB will release its results, but it's unlikely to be worse than Westpac's because Westpac is really being weighed down by that $1.3 billion money laundering fine.
And what's happening with the property market?
Well, the property market seems to be showing signs of recovery, Joe. According to the latest figures, the average price for property in Australia has gone up again for the first time since the pandemic started. So the national average property price went up 0.4% last month to $559,000. That includes houses and apartments aggregated together. And these figures come from Core Logic. But there's a lot of variation across the states and capitals. So last month, prices increased by a very tiny fraction among the capital cities, up 0.2%. But in regional areas, they went up 1%. So I guess people don't really have to show up to CBDs to do their work. So a lot of people moving more towards regional areas for lifestyle reasons, it seems. So now taking a look at the state-by-state breakdowns, you'll see the best performers are Darwin, Canberra, Hobart and Adelaide, up at least 1%. The smaller states which have done a better job of containing the coronavirus, whereas Brisbane and Perth up around 0.5%, the middle of the range, and Sydney even went up slightly by 0.1% after falling for months. Melbourne is the only capital which recorded a very small fall, down 0.2%. So look, prices haven't fallen by as much as expected. Months ago, economists were expecting doom and gloom. I would predict